Hello, I'm with Dr. Houston Dunleavy today, and we're going to be discussing one of his works that he wrote recently in 2019 called the Concord Duet for Flute and Clarinet. Welcome, Houston.
Thank you, Joel.
So, getting this all worked out, you said there's a little story behind the duet, so let's hear it.
Well, there was a trip up to Sydney for myself and Eve Duncan. We were being given half a concert each by the Sirius Ensemble, and I had a day off. One of those strange things that occasionally still happen. And I thought, I'll write a piece. I do that sometimes, 8 hours, see how much I can get written in 8 hours. Started with the computer, and the computer basically said, go on without me. I'm dying now. And it did. Boom. So all I had left was pencil and paper. So this was going to be a piece that was a bit shorter than I'd normally write. And I was staying with two wonderful people, Garen and Melissa, who were members of Sirius. And they were in such harmony and such a good relationship. And they lived in Concord. I thought they were in Concord, living in Concord. I'll write a piece for them, flute and clarinet, called Concord Duet. And that's how the piece started. And I did manage to finish it by the time they both came home from work. And they had a slow read through it. And they liked it. And they said, well, when we come down to Melbourne, we'll play it. Tragically, perhaps. No, not necessarily tragically. She got pregnant, couldn't make the trip. Garen still had a broken foot, I think. So two other players played it.
So, when listening to the work, it's a fairly frenetic piece.
Mm-hmm.
Describe the work for us and how your modus operandi for that.
Well, they have a kind of frenetic lifestyle because they had one baby already and they were quite busy and going everywhere. So yet they would always find time to come together and discuss and come to an agreement and then go off. And so the piece does that quite a bit. It moves to these sort of frenetic moments, as you say, but it always comes back to being perhaps not in unison, because that's a bit trite, but maybe playing exactly that they're on the, if you pardon the pun, the same page. And the piece says that, and then they go off and do another few things, and then they come back and discuss. And it had that kind of in and out feel, if you like, between being away from each other and doing stuff, and then coming back and drawing strength from each other. And that to me was a nice way of describing their relationship. It does that, for those who actually like this sort of thing. It does that with a series of pitch sets. Each pitch set changes, if you like, the activity. And however, the same idea of them coming back to a unified rather than unison bit of music is right the way through the piece.
So it's sort of, it gives it that sense of structure behind it, really. So you've got that frenetic duet that's doing their own thing and then coming back to being more ensemble based, to use that terminology. Then off you go again. So it's this back and forward, yeah?
Yeah, because my first teacher was a guy called Peter Toward, and Peter said, no matter what you're trying to emulate outside of the music, inside the music, it still has to be a piece of music. It still has to make sense not knowing what's going on behind it. And that's stuck with me for 40 years. And he was right. I mean, I could just say, no, it's just a piece for clarinet and flute. As many of my work is. Very little of my work has that kind of story structure. Some of it does. Some of it has imagery. But it's still got to work as a piece of music. And as you say, the structural element of coming back toward different kinds of unanimity is what I hope holds it together.
So, because you don't work in a sort of a narrative base in many cases, was this something that you thought, oh, I don't know where I'm going to go with this, or really was a springboard to think, oh, yes, I can do this because of the living situation you were under?
Oh, definitely the latter. Definitely the latter. It was actually quite fun to see the two of them together and know how lovely their relationship was. So there was always like, okay, they're going to talk about this now. I'll use different pictures to talk about this, to represent this. So the whole thing really, it just, as you say, springboarded. It just went one subject to another. And I did finish it because that's the end of the day. And that was the 8 hours or so that I had to do it with a pencil. And that's why it's the length it is. And the little cheeky ending is sort of, good night, and put the light out, After that, we don't know what happens. But we assume that they've had a lovely day, and they'll go to sleep well rested, because poor Garen was still trying to overcome his broken foot, which he just had, I think.
So, in regards to now, have you actually had written narrative-based pieces before, or was this one of your first experiences?
Well, narrative-based is, I suppose, without text is I think you might be talking about. I've had a couple which have told not so much like a tone poem, but maybe have been image-based or imagery-based. Probably the very first one was the most likely. The very first piece I ever wrote would be the most likely candidate, and that's a Dulce et Decorum Est, which is meant to be a kind of a tone poem based on Wilfred Owen's poem. I listened to it again about 20 years afterwards, because it was worth having listened to. I thought, let's see where I was. And I thought, geez, this is not a bad piece. This is quite good. I can see why they played it. But the need to actually tell a story, when in fact the story's been already told, without using the words, is not with me anymore. But to represent images, to represent colours, to represent emotions, to represent things, that's still with me, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't carry to the other person. It meant something to me. But I'm probably more likely to set something abstract. The piece I just finished, which is one of those odd things, a euphonium concerto, is called Three Portraits. One is called the warrior, one is called the dancer, and one is called the singer. And whilst there's no sort of martial marching in the warrior, it is a big, loud piece toward the end. The singer's quite lyrical, and the dancer is very rhythmic. But that's really not really thinking of any dance in particular, or any singer, or any warrior.
Was there some type of libretto or storyline behind that? No. So why do we call it those three titles?
They're portraits, like as if they were portraits in a museum. Those three were just three very contrasting pieces. And in fact, with the dancer, I heard the music long before I came up with the title. And I thought, well, it's 7/8. Quite a lot of it's this kind of dun 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 dun. Sort of like, I mean, I could easily have called it something to do with Miles Davis or Dave Brubeck, those sorts of pieces. But I thought, gosh, that sounds like a dance work. So maybe it could be a portrait of a dancer. All right, so I'm going to write two more portraits now. I've got to write them contrasting. What the singer came first, because sing, dance, Terpsichore, muse, and all that sort of stuff. So and what does the singer need to be? It needs to be lyrical. But that's really it. There's no song per se. And then finally, something to really, break that up. Too artsy touch. Let's have a warrior in there who makes everything loud, which is what happens.
I've jumped into onto the AMC website and had a quick look through your instrument and chamber music, and the clarinet compositions are around about a dozen, and flute compositions around about 8 or so, and flute, clarinet, piano is around about 2. I don't know how long, if the AMC's page has been updated, but that's roughly how many. So you obviously have an affinity for clarinet and flute, so which would have helped in your stream of consciousness, I suppose, writing the Concord duet.
Yeah, but I had 2 people with me who were flute and clarinet player, and I used to be a flute and clarinet player. Clarinet first. When I was 24, I had a fairly bad accident that pretty much, you can see it there, that huge scar. That's the end of your clarinet playing career when your thumb does that. I couldn't play for about 4 years. And not so much not being able to play, but I can't practice. And everyone else is practicing and getting better and getting all the jobs. And you're not. So about 13 months after this, I ended up in Cleveland doing my master's in composition. Because I realized, even though I'm left-handed, computer notation was just starting to happen. I didn't need the left hand as much as I thought I did. I could use computer notation. It took a few years for computer notation to catch up to the beauty of the calligraphy that you can have. And I think it was really not until the 90s that happened. But it was because I was from that woodwind background, and I played in concert bands and chamber ensembles, and played had a double major going in undergrad as a composer and a performer until this happened. I still can't listen, by the way, all the way through to the second movement of the Copland Concerto, because that's what I was studying when this happened, and that lovely long slow lyrical thing still makes me cry for all the wrong reasons.
So basically, it's in many respects, it's a bit of a comfort area for you, because you know the instruments so inside out, and that's why you've written probably a lot of clarinet pieces in your time, as well as you've said you've had flute experience. So I can understand why this particular piece, the Concord Duet, was able to flow quite in, because you've already got the skill sets behind you.
The skill sets and the two people.
The sort of spring. Yes, what you might.
The emotional thing.
Exactly.
If there'd been two trumpeters, I would have still have written the piece.
The two trumpets?
Yeah. Oh,
right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, that's just how it is. So it was a double whammy. It was a lovely experience, and also in a comfort zone for you in regards to the two instruments.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time this today, Houston. And we'd like to listen to the piece now. And the flautist is Lisa Breckenridge, and Ian Sykes is the clarinetist. The Concord Duet for flute and clarinet. Enjoy.